Scalise has spent the past 3 months first in the hospital, then in an inpatient rehab center. He is now back at work, Elaine, but he's still going to be spending a lot of time at an outpatient facility working to regain his strength and mobility.
And Nancy, to follow up, we saw you speak with Representative Scalise Thursday afternoon. How did he seem?
He seemed, frankly, thrilled to be back at work. This is clearly where his heart is. I'm sure it's been very difficult for him, as it would be for most lawmakers, knowing that they've been elected to represent the people of their district or the people of their state, and there is something that has kept them away from that duty, from that responsibility. And he was just grinning from ear to ear, even though you could tell that it's clearly still quite difficult for him to get around. He was walking slowly, and it's going to take him a lot of time to get even close to regaining the athleticism, the mobility that he had before. He's undergone some incredibly serious surgeries in the wake of some incredibly serious injuries, but he was utterly delighted to be back here. He was hugging every lawmaker who was within arm's reach, sometimes more than one of them at a time, and sometimes more than once. So, there was a lot of love here for him as well, because frankly, there were some lawmakers who were quite surprised that he was able to come back this quickly. Even his close friend, Cedric Richmond of Louisiana, a Democrat, said that based on the rehab timeline, and he's someone who has tracked Scalise's rehabilitation pretty closely, he thought that it was still going to be quite some time before Scalise was able to come back, but clearly he was champing at the bit.
And Nancy, we've seen the images out of the chamber, an image of unity really with that standing ovation. Can you just describe a little bit more the sense, the feeling in that chamber?
Well, look, Congress is a family, even if it is a dysfunctional family a lot of the time. These people have formed a very unusual and exclusive club. They have been elected to come here to Washington to serve the people of their districts and their states, and they can relate to one another in a way that is different than they can probably to almost anyone else, even if they don't always or even most of the time see eye to eye with each other. So the fact that one of their own had been so gravely wounded by a gunman who had opened fire on not just him but his colleagues as well was deeply disturbing to members of the House from both sides and the Senate today. There were several senators who were sitting in that House chamber when he came back to make his speech. So this is one of those instances where it really doesn't matter what party you're in. If you have feeling for your fellow man, you're going to be devastated and distraught about what happened to him, and also to some degree concerned about your own safety, because all of the lawmakers who were in that House chamber know that they could just as easily be targeted for their views. They are in a highly visible role, and that is a risk they take when they step up to serve their country.
Nancy, his return comes at a time when lawmakers have a lot on their legislative agenda, including tax reform. What more have you heard on Capitol Hill about this plan and its chances for success?
Well, it all depends on what the ultimate legislation looks like, Elaine. You had an 8-page outline that came out yesterday, but there were still so many details left to be filled in that it's very difficult to draw many conclusions about who might be on board and who might not be at the end of the day. What I can tell you is that there are Republicans today particularly from big blue states like New York and California, who say they're very uncomfortable with the idea of removing the state and local tax exemption from the federal tax code, which is one of the ideas that the Republican authors of this plan have had to try to recoup some of the revenue that's going to be lost when they slash everyone's tax rates, as they'd like to do. These lawmakers said, hey, I can't be on board with something like that, because after all, their state and local taxes are quite high in those states, and they feel that their residents are going to be severely impacted if they can't then deduct those taxes on their federal returns. So these are the kinds of of disputes that you're going to see, and they're always going to be over items in this bill that involve trying to eliminate exemptions, deductions, and goodies and loopholes and carve-outs that exist right now. That's where you're going to see the fight, and that's part of the reason that Republicans, for the most part, have been pretty tight-lipped about what it is that they want to eliminate, because these kinds of fights are the things that can sink a tax reform bill and have in the past.
All right, Nancy Cortez on a busy day on Capitol Hill. Nancy, thanks so much.
You're welcome.